All right. We are live. If you guys can see us, type a comment. I'm here with Dr. Gus Vickery. Thank you for coming today.
It's my pleasure to be back again with you, Kelly.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Can you guys hear us? I want to make sure. Is it recording? Yeah, okay. Okay, they can see and hear us both. Perfect. So I thought we'd start off. Dr. Vickery was going to kind of fill us in on what's been going on down in Asheville since he lives there.
Yeah, this is my home, and this is where our clinic is, not far from downtown. And thanks to all of you, any of you who've, whether it's good thoughts, prayers, good mojo that you've sent our way, or possibly you've donated, we're really appreciative. It's been grassroots. This is how this community has been surviving this and getting through, and how we're going to rebuild has really been, and that's the most inspiring thing, is seeing this community throughout the whole Western North Carolina region, plus East Tennessee. It wasn't just Asheville that was affected by this, obviously. The way that people just showed up for each other and showed up for their neighbors, and people who didn't have to, like getting into their ATVs and putting chainsaws and generators and strapping, riding up a mountain to a place where they knew somebody lived, and just seeing, what can they do to help that person. It was really inspiring, but it's really bad. It is. I told Kelly, this is kind of a depressing thing, because it is. It's just depressing. And, there's all over the world, there are tsunamis and tidal waves and earthquakes. And so you don't feel like, oh gosh, woe is me. How did I get stuck in a natural disaster? Natural disasters happen. We've never had anything like this in Asheville. Asheville is actually one of the places that's shielded from really bad things. We don't get hurricanes. We didn't get hurricanes. We don't get tornadoes. We don't get, it's like we really have been shielded. And this was a shocker. And many say it was like 1,000-year event in this region, right? The kind of thing. It changes riverbeds and stream beds. It changes the sides of mountains. Like the whole architecture of the region has shifted in some kind of fundamental way. And that on itself is, I guess, in one way depressing, and in another, nature has a lot of power to actually, to come in and, so to speak, life wins and fill in, and it creates new beauty, and you find new places. But all the sacred places that I had in the woods and trails and by streams, there's just trees down and things have shifted. It's not the same. But the saddest thing, of course, is what happened to the humans that really suffered. A lot of dead people, a lot more than has been accounted for. I don't mean that as a conspiracy thing at all. I just think it's very, very hard to do it in accounting when you get up into these coves and hollers. Plus, many people, sorry to say this, but they're buried under mud. They're buried under debris. They're buried under rock slides and mountains, and you can't find them and you can't account for them. But these the search and rescue people that continue to go out into areas that they haven't been able to get into typically come back, and there's another possibly 10 or 20 people that they found that haven't survived. So it's really sad. And then the flooding decimated businesses. Just decimated them. It just people, good people, mechanics, people who run, say, grading businesses had their warehouses and all their capital equipment just washed down river, and without flood insurance. So sorry to be so depressing, but it is. And everybody around that I'm bumping into and talking to, or patients that I'm seeing, are saying the same thing. We're all feeling it, right? We're all feeling this weird combination of gratitude that we're okay, that we can rebuild our lives. We're feeling a sense of hope because we see what the community's already done and what it's capable of, but we're also feeling a sense of guilt that we didn't get hurt worse and other people are really suffering. And it's just a weird hodgepodge of emotions that leaves you with this sort of blanket of heaviness over you. It's just, everything's heavy. And we got to learn to walk through it, and that's it. Right. But thank you. And it'll be a long time. It'll be a long time for this recovery process. This isn't a few months. Everybody's back to okay. This is years.
Yeah. I've been once, but it's a magical place, Asheville.
Yeah, it really is.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a magical place for sure.
Yep. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And we chatted a little before we went on. I wanted to start with, just because everyone was asking about it, what your thoughts were on Semorelin.
Yeah, I'm curious how that popped up. Was it just something you read about recently?
No, I started it a month ago.
Right.
I worked with my local doctor here, and I'm having knee surgery in a week. And it's good for wound recovery. It's good for muscle repair. It's,
Mhm.
and I know it takes time, to work in your system. But he's on it. I'm like, let me just try it. I've heard of it. And then the company I'm with now is actually allowing people to get it if they want, through a
Well,
doctor.
good.
And
Yeah.
so everyone's like, I want it. And I'm like, do
Well,
your research.
let's talk about what it's doing and
Yeah.
how it can help and who it can help. Semorelin is in a class of peptides called growth hormone secretagogues, and there's a number of these different growth hormone secretagogues. And what growth hormone secretagogues do is that they send a signal to your pituitary gland that releases various hormones to increase the production of growth hormone. Right. So growth hormone is produced by our pituitary gland. Most of it's produced at night. Most of ours is pulsed out at night. It's a repair and recovery hormone. It helps muscle, connective tissue, and bone repair, recover. It maintains the density of those tissues. And it potentially improves deep sleep. So the part of the wound healing is increasing. The idea behind that is if you increase IGF-1, you heal faster, and you do. So growth hormone is converted into something in our body called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. It's called that because it looks a lot like insulin, but it's not insulin, so it shouldn't be mistaken with it. Now, IGF-1 can be measured. It's a very inexpensive blood test. Like the cash pay rate for an IGF-1 level is probably $15. And why I bring that up is that to really benefit the most from something like a peptide like that, you kind of want to know where are you at baseline, possibly, because there are some individuals based on genetics that might go and get an IGF-1 level, and they're at the 90% range already, right? They've got a very high IGF-1 level. If they do, you're probably not getting a whole lot of extra benefit out of taking a peptide that's designed to increase IGF-1. Now, if most individuals who are middle-aged or older, or have dealt with metabolic conditions, or have been in a process of losing weight, possibly losing a lot of weight, you could, if you're like, I don't know how to get that test, you'd probably wager that your IGF-1 levels are a little bit low. Because when we go into a catabolic state where we're losing a lot of weight, IGF-1 levels tend to drop over time. And boosting them is a really smart strategy, an adjunctive strategy to improving body composition goals. So Semorelin is one of many options. The next level up is something called CJC 1295. And that's often combined with another one called ipamorelin. You'll usually find that as a pair. And then the next level up is something called tesamorelin combined with ipamorelin. Now, tesamorelin and ipamorelin is an expensive peptide, but I'm going to tell you it works. It works. It's powerful. You see major increases in IGF-1, plus significant benefits with what we call increased lipolysis. It activates basically the breaking down of abdominal fat if you are in a calorie deficit and if you're training. So Semorelin's a good one. It's just that tesamorelin is probably more powerful than Semorelin. It's also more expensive than Semorelin. Yeah. Yeah. And so, should you try this peptide? Well, you certainly could just give it a go. It's a safe thing to do. It's very important, though, that you know that these are meant to be pulse dosed. They are not meant to be continuous therapies. If you stay on a growth hormone secretagogue continuously, you will eventually downregulate your response and downregulate your own IGF-1 levels.
Can I ask a question about
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
So I've heard different ways, like, 5 on, 2 off if you're going to do weekly, and or if you were to do weekly, like 6 weeks on, 1 week off, or 3 months on, 1 month off, or all of the above, like what.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to pulse dose it. We used to ride it years ago when I first started using these. The standard was like 5 days on, 2 days off, and then every couple of months you'd take a break for a month, and then you'd run it again. And with my patients, I'm tracking IGF-1 levels, so I'm able to monitor response. We might switch to different peptides depending on, and we might see them respond to one but not to another. And ultimately, if you pulse dose it properly, you get the opposite. You actually entrain higher levels of IGF-1 over time. So let's say your baseline level of IGF-1 was 90, which would be kind of lowish. It wouldn't be abnormally low, it would be on the low side. And you're responsive to the peptide. Some people respond, some people won't. And that's a very important point, is to monitor, is this helping me or not? Because if it's not, you're spending money and putting something in your body and you don't need to. But if you're responding to it, and you pulse dose it properly, your baseline IGF-1 level may improve to 130 or 140 a year later. And then if you weren't even using the peptide, that's where your IGF-1 levels are. And that is good for healthy aging. That's good for body composition. So there's a lot of variability in how you can pulse dose it. If you're going to do 5-2, you don't do that continuously. You've got to take longer blocks of time off and just kind of give your body a rest from it. With Semorelin, I consider it one of the weaker growth hormone secretagogues. So if they're responding, we'll typically do up to 60 days in a row and then 30 days off, and then 60 days in a row and 30 off. They can take nights off throughout that 60-day window. There's just some times where it doesn't suit you to, give the injection.
Yeah,
exactly. Because that's a very important point, Kelly. Most of the time you're going to inject a growth hormone secretagogue at night before bedtime. Most of the time you're going to do that. There are other ways to get a benefit from it. And the reason for that is most of your growth hormone is being produced at night. So you're telling the pituitary, hey, let's push that up a little bit. But insulin actually interferes with growth hormone release. It antagonizes it. So if you ate late at night and you have an insulin surge and then you dose your Semorelin, you may negate any benefit that you were going to get from it. So then you're wasting it. And so, if you do that, you just skip that night and you wait and you pick it up the next night. These are meant to be used. If you're a responder, these are meant to be used pulse dose longitudinally as a longevity strategy, but they really are a nice complement. Most of the patients I do comprehensive evaluations on that we initiate GLP-1s for body composition are going to also benefit from IGF-1 boosting. And if they're okay with that, if it's not too complex for them, they don't mind the cost, we're typically adding in a growth hormone secretagogue to their rotation and then monitoring IGF-1 levels. If you have a pretty good relationship with your doctor, you could ask him, would you check an IGF-1 level for me?
Yeah, I'm going to now. Yeah.
And they'll say, well, and yours will, because he's got you or she's got you on a peptide for that. But if they're like, well, we don't have a medical reason, we can't build that to insurance, just say, well, could I pay the cash pay rate for it, and just get the level. And sometimes you'll still get resistance because the doctor's like, I don't know how to interpret it and I don't want to be responsible for it. But it's an inexpensive lab. There are probably a lot of like lab wholesalers now that'll let you just go and get what you want, like any lab test now, and you could get an IGF-1 level. Because if you invest in Semorelin, it's still not a cheap peptide. And you monitor and you didn't get the response, then maybe you could respond to CJC and Semorelin, right? But this is, I didn't know where you guys wanted to go in the conversation. This is for you. It's not for me. But in the lead up to this, my thinking was all around everything else that we can be doing alongside a GLP so that we're getting the best long-term result and not just becoming dependent on a GLP to somehow maintain our body composition. And this is one very helpful way of doing that. Now, I could talk more about this, but we may have covered it.
I have a couple follow-ups about it. So I'll mention those, and then we have other questions already too. So I'll give you a couple, and then maybe you can, one is, I kind of already talked about it, but is it okay using after a GLP-1 if you lost muscle mass, if you want to build muscle? I'm assuming obviously you got to work out too. And then the other one was taking things like Lipo B or Lipo C with it.
Those are all perfectly fine to do. It plays well with everything else, just about. Other than, if you eat and you spike your insulin. Otherwise, though, there's not much that's going to interfere with its effect, and there's not going to be a detrimental effect of the combinations. A lot of my patients are on very complex regimens where we're addressing growth hormone, we're addressing reproductive hormones, we're addressing immune system dysfunction, we're addressing GLP, and we're using combinations of peptides and therapeutics and stacks and to achieve multiple goals. And it works really, really well as in concert as a system. But this is an important distinction. People think that because there's a lot of blogs that write about growth hormone peptides as though they're anabolic, as though they're going to give you muscle. They're not actually directly, they're not directly anabolic. They're not. They potentiate your ability to gain more muscle by potentiating repair and recovery. And what people find when they get onto these peptides is that their workouts, they can actually work out a little harder. They recover faster. They can work out more frequently. The muscle repairs faster. So they actually end up gaining muscle, but not because the peptide directly facilitated that. And so this is the critical piece. To take advantage of any of these therapeutics, the fitness piece is non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And it's non-negotiable for your health, for your life, for your brain, for every, I mean, it's exercise. We know it's more powerful than any other medicine for depression, for cognitive function, for a sense of well-being, for sleep, for stress reduction,
Yeah.
for metabolic health. And so the fitness piece is critical. And if you just get on Semorelin and you don't go engage in a routine to complement it, you're probably not going to get much of a benefit from it.
Yeah.
But if you take advantage of the opportunity Semorelin or any other one of these give you, and you push into your workouts and you say, I'm going to use this next 60 days to actually work out harder, work out more frequently, and see how my body responds, then yeah, you can get really wonderful gains from that.
And then with Semorelin, the Ipamorelin, Semorelin, what you were saying, it basically just, it's just moving that number up quicker. I mean,
Yeah.
it's still the same, but therefore you're going to benefit quicker, more.
Yeah, it's just very powerful. So again, when I'm following levels, I see the variable responses. I will find that most, and this is not in the scientific literature, this is just my observation. Most women will respond to CJC 1295 Ipamorelin very well. Truthfully, Kelly, at Semorelin, I used to use it. I don't use it anymore because I think these other peptides are actually better and more potent. You know, I think they're a step up from it.
I'm sleeping better. I'll tell you that. Like literally right away, I was sleeping.
Oh yeah, it does. It deepens sleep. It improves sleep, and there's no question about that. And so I bet Semorelin's still a good peptide. I'm not trying to you know, yeah. I think CJC 1295 and Ipamorelin are a more powerful combination.
Okay.
And females, I'll typically see good responses. In men, I see variable responses with that particular peptide. Some respond, some don't. I see everyone respond to Semorelin, Ipamorelin, and it's a powerful response. And people feel it. You're feeling Semorelin. I have to actually back people down because they'll get on like a 6-week pulse of Semorelin, and their IGF-1 levels are now, you know, let's say the upper range of normal for it's a 50-year-old guy, and upper range of normal is 275. Their levels are 350. Right now we're well above a natural level of IGF-1, and they're feeling incredible. And they're like, can I just stay on this? I'm like, no. We're not going to actually put your body into a abnormal physiological state just to try to get benefit. And for me, that's always a guiding principle, is that the body itself is brilliant, and sort of the parameters within which it operates that have been well established, that we know for long periods of time, are there for a reason. And so we can maximize our potentials within those different parameters. We can take IGF-1 from the 30th percentile to the 90th percentile. And I think that's probably a good thing. But I think if we start playing with it at the 150th percentile, we don't know what we're actually creating downstream.
Right.
And so that's another reason monitor levels. But I will tell you, with Ipa, I always see a robust response. It is an expensive peptide. A 30-day run of it is like $500.
Yeah. Okay. 2 others real quick on that, and then hope we can probably move into some other topics. But one's asking, is it okay if they have menopausal high estrogen related issues? And then 2 other people are wondering about taking it with hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's. I did read online that they're potentially, because they both deal with metabolism, could, you know. So what are your thoughts on those 2?
I think there's really minimal real interaction. Like the potential things you're talking about are really theoretical. Now, obviously, if you have Hashimoto's, you're probably and it's affected your thyroid function, meaning, because there are people who have the antibodies that you can measure for their thyroid, they actually have it, but it hasn't impacted function yet, which is also why it might be important to ask your doctor, not just to check thyroid hormones, but to check thyroid antibodies, thyroid peroxidase antibodies, because if you catch it at the stages where you can measure the antibodies are there, and it's quite common, but it hasn't affected your function yet, usually you can eliminate gluten and dairy, and sometimes it might be other things, and you will actually see those antibodies go away, and you preserve thyroid function. But and it's never too late to actually get onto a thyroid protocol to reverse the autoimmune condition and potentially not need thyroid hormone. But my assumption would be, if you have Hashimoto's, you've got your thyroid functions within the normal limit, meaning that whether that's through replacement or some other protocol, that your TSH and your free T3 and free T4 levels look good. Right? If they don't look good, that's the first thing to fix, not IGF-1. right? The first thing to fix is thyroid. And that's also another important guiding principle is like the priorities. How do we decide where do we intervene in a human system? When there's clear systemic dysfunction, we've got an autoimmune thyroid condition with low thyroid. Well, we really should be focusing in there even before. I mean, GLP-1s could still be helpful in that moment, but it doesn't take long with a good thyroid regimen to have normalization of thyroid functions. Same thing with women going through menopause, because somebody mentioned estrogen. Now, some women are not candidates for hormone replacement therapy because they have a history of blood clots, they have the BRCA gene, something of that sort, but most are candidates. And I would encourage most women to consider hormone replacement therapy, within pretty quick period of time of going into menopause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know if I'm in menopause yet, but I might be.
Because if you lose your reproductive hormone signals, estrogen, progesterone, and potentially testosterone, that is a big impactor of your human system and your metabolism and your muscle and your bone and your mood and your cognitive health. And so I'm like, well, let's fix those hormones first, and if you're menopausal, that means that we're going to need to introduce them. Now, you should work with someone who's skilled in this and understands, because if you're a certain amount of time past menopause, you have to go very low and slow and very delicately. Whereas if you're just transitioning into menopause, then you can actually push in a little deeper. So it's critical that you're working with someone who understands what they're doing and that you're addressing all three sex hormones, because it's not uncommon for a doctor to just say, okay, well, we'll get you on some estrogen replacement for your hot flashes, and treat it as simply that. It's just, okay, let's just manage your hot flashes if you have them. And then if you have a uterus, they'll put you on progesterone under the idea that it's just protecting you from getting endometrial cancer. But actually, progesterone is critical for brain health and mood and deep sleep. So it's doing a lot more than just helping protect you from endometrial cancer. Estrogen is doing a lot more than just helping control vasomotor symptoms, hot flashes, night sweats, etc. But if they do that, they'll often neglect testosterone. And you may have a decent testosterone level. It depends on your B team, which is your adrenals. There's a pathway through the adrenals of creating testosterone, and some women will have a very good B team and they'll actually have a decent testosterone level. Some, it just disappears off the map, like my wife. And testosterone is critically important for women, critically important. Same reasons it is for men, just different levels, right? It's about ratios. So if you're entering menopause or you've gone through menopause and your reproductive hormones haven't been addressed and you're a candidate for it, that's a critical piece to take care of, right? Now, if you can't be, regardless of whether you can be on hormones or not, you could still use Semorelin or IGF-1 inducing, improving agents. That's not going to create a negative interaction, but I'm going to encourage anybody to make sure they're getting these things back into more optimal ranges to get the benefit from the IGF-1 boosting. So that I kind of talked around a bit there. Was that clear?
Yeah, that's
yeah.
Uh-oh, what happened? Oh, I'm in the wrong window. Sorry. That was weird. Yes, no, that was good. That was good. Sorry about that. Okay, so what are the benefits of creatine and its benefits for weight loss? And by the way, pretty much everyone in my life now takes amino acids because
good.
And I'm telling you, it gets me that extra protein, and I feel better. I'll take it every morning. I take obviously my supplements and all of that, but
one tip is to just have a little container that you carry with you that you fill up with the aminos. And if you get to a day where you just got really busy and you're running around and it's been hours since you've had anything to eat, you can just take a portion of aminos. There's no calories, there's no insulin response. And it's amazing how it'll just you'll feel any kind of sense of hunger, moodiness, stuff just kind of go away. I keep them when
So no insulin response. You could, if you took some before bed, that's not going to hurt.
No, it's not. It's a common strategy to improve protein targets. Plus, it promotes recovery. When you go through your hip surgery, you should take aminos at bedtime.
Oh, nice. I'll do that. Thanks. Yeah.
You can take them at bed. You can take them morning fasting. You can just throw them in at any point.
Yeah, I'm going to start doing them at night too then.
You need to. But back to the creatine. Creatine's in my top 5, right? Yeah. I have a top 5 list of, if you put me on a desert island and you give me a continual supply of 5 supplements, these are the 5 I want, because I know that they'll make my life so much easier on that desert island, right? Like if I'm only able to find certain sources of food, I'll still be okay. Creatine is in my top 5 for many reasons. Now, it's not a direct weight loss agent. There's no evidence whatsoever that it increases your metabolic rate or that it's going to facilitate lipolysis or anything of that sort. It does potentiate fitness, much like IGF-1, meaning if you load your muscles with creatine, but that's not the only thing creatine's doing, but if you load your muscles with creatine, water follows along. You're hydrating your muscles and you're adding the creatine. Now, that is where some people who are very attached to a number on a scale get geeked out, right? Because they start creatine, 2 weeks later, they've got 5 pounds on or 3 pounds on. And they're like, I can't take this. It's causing weight gain. It's not causing fat gain. It's causing you to maintain a greater hydration state in your muscles. That's good, right? That's what you would want. If you got onto a DEXA, that 5 pounds would be measured as lean mass. It's not really lean mass, but it would be measured as lean mass, not fat mass. So that's really critical to understand. But what it does is it increases, we used to think it only increased muscle power, meaning the first moment of explosive power, you use a system called creatine phosphokinase. And it's like a quick boop, and you make a little energy, and then you could reload that creatine. But it turned out it also facilitates muscle endurance because of the hydration. Your muscles are stronger, right? So you can be more explosive, you can be stronger, and you can train longer with creatine and recover faster. But it also now has studies demonstrating it might be, somewhat effective for depression and cognitive challenges. It's considered kind of what we'd call a nootropic agent, that it benefits brain health and brain function, which typically results in improvements in mood and improvements in cognitive capabilities and focus. Now, the way it's doing it is a little bit of a complex biochemical thing, and I won't go into all that detail, but essentially one thing that creatine's doing is it's decompressing a whole biochemical system in your body that's like an anchor important system called methylation. And people may have read about MTHFR genes and this, that, or the other, and methylation. And methylation is important. It's very important, but it might be being overplayed right now. There are other aspects of biochemistry, like what we call redox, that are far more important than methylation that should be addressed. But what 60 or 70% of your methylation activity, meaning your methyl groups that you use, which are limited, every day are donated to just restoring your creatine balance. So if you go ahead and restore that balance yourself, you just decompress that whole system. All those methyl groups can now go do all the other jobs of methylation, including detox. So that is why creatine is one of my top 5. Your body spends a lot of energy resynthesizing creatine because it's a very important molecule for a lot of processes in the human system.
So a couple follow-up questions with that then. One, I mean, you can do pills or powder, I know. Now, I make a drink in the morning, and I'm probably doing it wrong, and let me know your thoughts here. But I have a protein drink that has like vitamins and minerals in it that I have in the morning. I put my amino acids in there. I know I shouldn't, in the sense that you're not supposed to mix them with other protein, but I only heard that it might make them lose a little effectiveness. And then I add creatine. Am I putting too much stuff in one thing? It doesn't matter. Just
You're fine. Creatine is one of those you can just throw it in wherever. You can take
but
it.
doing amino acids, am I doing it myself a disservice by adding them to a whey protein drink?
Well, that's a real question that hasn't been answered. The original thinking was that if you go ahead and get a full load of complete protein, that it's not that you're hurting yourself, but you're possibly just wasting the extra essentials. Right?
Like all of it, or maybe just some of it? Like
no, I mean that it's not been proven one way or the other, right?
Okay.
It's a theory based on how we understand the body working. And of course, as we know from our last conversation, as much as I love the aminos, getting complete protein is still critical. You can't do aminos alone. You can do aminos for a big chunk of your daily protein requirement, but you've still got to get complete protein. I think the best practice, you're not hurting yourself. I want to be clear. You may not be helping yourself that much. The creatine, you throw it in anywhere, and you'll read, oh, you should split dose it, or you should do this, or you need to do a loading dose. Forget about all that. Take 5 grams a day, whether in a powder or in capsule forms. Take it with other things, or take it on an empty, whatever, right? Take 5 grams a day, take it continuously, and you're good. You've answered your creatine question. You've taken care of that one. Okay. So the creatine's an easy one. I personally have my patients, what I advise my patients to do is most of my patients end up in a rhythm where when they wake up in the morning, they're using like our supplement stack. So they're using our nutrients and fats and amino acids. And that's really their kind of like first meal of the day, because there's almost no calories in it. And it's just supplying the essential nutrients to the body. And they're not that hungry either, right?
No upset stomach from taking all the vitamins.
I mean, some do, and I'll tell them then put some kind of a little bit of food with it or something, to buffer that. It depends on your own stomach. I guess also over time you get desensitized to it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's ridiculous right now how many capsules I'm taking because I'm playing around with different therapeutics, and I just dump them all in. I may swallow them all, and I mean, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
So you can kind of train yourself to get into that state. And then they're going to get hungry possibly 11, 12, 1, somewhere in that window. That's where I'm like, you're going to get some complete protein at that point, whether that's through food, like a meal, or whether that's going to be a protein powder. Most of them are electing at that point just to do a big smoothie and go ahead and double up the scoops of the whey or the plant-based protein. Go ahead and make that a 50-gram smoothie, right? You don't have to make it 25. You can go ahead and say, I'm going to leverage this for protein. And then if you want to add some collagen or colostrum or whatever else you want to throw in there, some blueberry powder, some spirulina, however you want to dress up your smoothie with other things, you're welcome to do that. And they would just drink that, and that would be their somewhere kind of midday, what you'd call their meal. And then they're not going to eat again until the mid-afternoon, and they're not going to eat. They're going to take another load of the supplements and aminos, and then they're going to have something for dinner. And that's going to typically be some protein, whether plant or animal, along with maybe some vegetables or something. And so really they're having one real meal a day. They're having one kind of, juiced up. When I say juice, I don't mean juice, but, a smoothie that's really nutrient dense. And then they're using 2 portions of nutrients at other times. So the body is receiving this continuous signal of abundance, right? Oh, nutrients are coming in, essential fats are coming in, phospholipids are coming in, B vitamins are coming in, proteins coming in. And it really just creates it keeps metabolic rate up. It keeps the alarm systems in the central nervous system of, hey, we're in a big calorie deficit. It keeps them a little less reactive, and it keeps you not hungry really at all. You're just not even bothered that much by hunger. And you're still eating some real food and getting some real protein. Now that's what most people are doing. And so that's separating the aminos from the times that you're putting that other protein in.
Yeah. And then I know it depends on yours versus, I know Perfect Amino, which I started with before I got yours. Mm-hmm. It's like comparable to 30 grams of protein, comparable. I know, it's not. And yours, I believe, are like 25.
Hers are the exact same amino acids and ratios and quantities as well.
Okay. It's because on yours it says 25. So is there a reason?
And that's what Perfect Amino should say.
Very on the side of it.
Here's what they're doing. And this is legitimate. And I do like the company Body Health there. I believe they've got good integrity. So what they're doing is they're saying it's really comparative to what food were you eating? Because
whey protein.
Yeah. Right. So for whey protein, because whey protein, while it is kind of the best protein powder for amino acid profile, the overall utilization rate as measured, meaning what percent of that protein went to the service of protein synthesis, is lower. To keep things easy for our patients, I just go ahead and say count the aminos as a 25-gram portion. Okay. Right? Just count it there, leave it there. And if you're hitting the relatively high protein targets we've set for people, you're going to be just fine. You're not going to be in a protein insufficient state.
So I know you say, and there are questions, but I'm going off a little bit here, like 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight.
Yes.
So if I'm like 130, what if I want to do 170? Is that going to?
No. So there is a point where you're not going to hurt yourself. There is a point where you're going to be wasting it, right? Like you're not using it. And if a lot of that's complete protein, you are creating nitrogen waste, which is urea. Which, I mean, it could theoretically cause a little kidney stress, but it's unlikely if you have normal, healthy kidneys to cause you a problem. But and it depends on the context, and this is critical. Somebody who's just come onto your platform and they're like, oh my gosh, I've got to lose, let's just say they need to lose 100 pounds of fat. And they're like, I'm going to start. That person will absolutely benefit from going well above that ideal body weight target. They will. There are good clinical studies demonstrating they'll be less hungry, they'll lose less muscle, they'll feel better, they'll do better just keeping the protein high. Where you've gotten are you at the body composition you want to be at, or are you close to
I'm
it?
like 35 out and I've been stalled for a month.
Okay,
But
so
I'm doing everything, but I've got surgery. I'm not stressed about it right now. I'm
yeah,
not going to try to lose during surgery recovery. I want to just,
yeah.
I do
So,
great, but
yeah, and so you're at a point now where you probably just sticking with the normal number is going to be suitable for you, right? Like, and the only way to know is to try it and see how you respond, and that's going to mostly be very subjective,
Mhm.
non-scientific. How's my mood? How's my hunger? How's my energy? And again, the fitness piece, which is so critical, really keeping track of your workouts, like whether it's a high intensity interval on an elliptical or it's lifting weights, how many reps and sets are you able to do? How the next day, how quickly are you waking up totally sore and wasted? Or are you waking up feeling pretty good? You
Yeah.
know, like keeping track of those things. And that's going to kind of tell you, is this extra protein helping
Okay.
me or not? You can, and it's somewhat helpful. We do genetic profiles on our patients where we look at their nutrigenomics, and you can predict who's going to get a more favorable response from a very high protein diet versus those who are not likely to. So there's also genetic tools to kind of personalize that.
Yeah. All right. We've got not too many here. So let me go through a few short, quick ones like efficacy for creatine, powder pill, gummies. Does it matter?
It doesn't, but I'd look carefully at the gummies because a lot of times they'll have corn syrups, or
Mhm.
some of them are just like a pure natural gelatin, which is actually good for you, but most are not. I try to stay away from gummies just because but you read the ingredients. Maybe it's a
Yeah.
good one.
Okay.
But otherwise, no. As long as you're getting the 5 grams delivered in some way into your body, it does not matter.
Yeah. For a slow responder, doing all the things to help the process, what else can they do? Supplements, increase protein. I mean, I know your nutrients, protein, fatty acids, all of that,
Yeah.
but someone that's
Yeah.
responding slowly.
So it's a good question. Things that might boost the response and boost the process to try and see. Berberine is one of my favorites. It's a
What is,
botanical
oh,
berberine.
I always say berberine.
People
Yes,
call it berberine. Yeah.
yeah.
So adding berberine in, I think, is a great idea. I would
Okay.
actually recommend most people try that and see. Now, some people might notice it upsets their gut. They can tell. If so, you can get dihydroberberine and it won't upset the gut. It's already gone through a biochemical transformation that takes place in the gut. And so switching over to dihydroberberine can be helpful. And so that can sometimes be a nice metabolic booster. Another botanical that can boost metabolic rate and has some decent data, holy basil. Holy basil is a botanical. Typically, when I get into botanicals, there are a lot of good companies. So I'm not saying that this one's the only good one, but Gaia is a brand, GAIA. They're very trustworthy. They have a farm not far from me in Mills River. I've
Nice.
toured their facilities. I've met with their scientists. I see what they do. Their botanical formulations are top notch, first class, right? So if I'm going to go with botanicals like ashwagandha or rhodiola or other adaptogens, or elderberry for immune, or holy basil, I'm going to typically use the Gaia brand. But if you have another good brand that's excellent, fine. That's, just check it out. But holy basil is a good one to try and add on. Now, there is a new product, but I can't speak to it yet, that I came across. I spoke at a conference in San Diego, actually kind of during that hurricane stuff, which is when I got sick flying in and out of San Diego. And it was a great crowd, and they had some interesting products there. And one of them, there are two that I think your tribe might be interested in, but I'm trying to get my confidence around them, but I trust the source. One of them is designed to activate the brown adipose tissue conversion, right? White adipose. And so it's a thermogenic product. And there's been, those have come and gone for years, and they're advertised on television. They used to have ephedra. They're loaded with caffeine. They have a bunch of stimulants and stuff, but this is different. And the little studies they had, they were small, looked promising that you could boost metabolic rate through the thermogenic pathway. And maybe I'll follow up with you, Kelly, after I've had a
Please
chance to
do.
vet
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and these are great. I love these conversations, and we'll be able to do this again. And
And
we
I'm
can.
all about being a guinea pig for
Yeah.
things too.
And the other is really interesting because I think this other one could help people not go up on their GLP-1 for appetite control. It's a powder. It's totally benign. A doctor created it, and it's a combination of plant glycosides And an amino as a proprietary blend, he won't say, but there's a blend of amino acids that have basically an acetic acid molecule attached to them. And you just take a quarter teaspoon of the powder, you mix it in some water and drink it. And the only thing it's going to do is trick your nervous system into believing that you've been fed, right? And it turns off hunger signaling. Now, yeah, and so right now I'm not in a weight loss mode or anything like that, but I was like, I'd gotten up that morning. I'm in San Diego. My circadian clock's all messed up. I've not eaten a thing, and I really didn't eat much the day before because I don't want to be on eating plain food and stuff. So all I've been doing is taking amino acids and nutrients. And so it was about the time I would have been hungry at home, right? Or I was about to get hungry, and I was like, all right. And she just gave me a dose, and I took them. Now I had to speak a couple hours later, and if you're getting up on a stage in front of 100 people, clinicians, you've got a little adrenaline and stuff like that. So maybe, but it didn't dawn on me until like 4 hours later when I was walking back by our table that I hadn't felt a sense of hunger whatsoever. Wow. I know. So again, I think it'll be hit or miss with people, but it's very safe and it's not expensive. And
if maintenance too.
Yeah, and for somebody who, let's say they get onto the GLP, they're getting a good response, but they're still having these breakthrough hunger moments. If they could add something like that instead of having to dose titrate up, I think that's going to be a better plan. Now, also the other things
you have info on yet, or is that one?
Yeah, well, it is. I think I'm going to go ahead and order a case to our office, and I'm going to have some patients try it, and I'm going to see what kind of response they get. If it's good, we'll do a follow-up conversation. Look,
let me know because I would be down with that too.
and I'll tell people what it is and how they did it. Yeah. I want to get more confidence in it first. I'm going to run it on our own patients and see how they respond. Now, that's going to obviously just help mute out hunger so that people can stay in a calorie deficit. Now, again, it'll always go back to, are you pushing into the fitness? Are you pushing into metabolic rate first? But then if you have access to it, sauna and cold exposure will increase the metabolic rate, right? Yep. They will facilitate weight loss. So if you're able to add in 5 minutes of cold exposure, that could be a cold shower, it could be a cold plunge. If you're able to add that into your day, over time, your metabolic rate is going to go up. Your dopamine's also going to go up.
That's amazing. Yeah, I heard. Yeah. No, it's amazing.
If you have access to a sauna, infrared or dry sauna, and you can get into that sauna 3 times a week or 4 times a week for 20 minutes at full heat and get that sweat, you're going to increase your metabolic rate. You're going to increase your IGF-1 levels. You're going to increase more.
You can get them for your house now. They have like the small ones. Yep.
They do. And they even have like the little blanket systems that will create the same effect. Not that expensive. So those are 2 tactics that I coach my patients on considering, not just for accelerating body composition transitions, but also so that they can long-term health, right? It's just good for your long-term health. If you're not taking it, you should add carnitine, acetyl L-carnitine as a supplement. It can really help with basically fat moving into mitochondria and supporting mitochondrial function. And I would add that into my stack, acetyl L-carnitine. Typically, we stock the Thorne product here. There's also other companies, of course, that make good quality carnitine. The dose is 500 milligrams twice a day. But one thing I just want to segue briefly. Are you familiar, and is your audience familiar with the concept of calorie flux and how that influences weight loss over time? So calorie flux is a simple concept. It's essentially saying, how many calories did I take in total and how many calories did my body expend? Right. And on average, and you add those 2 together. So if you were on a 1,200 calorie diet, but you had yourself up at a 2,500, or maybe say 2,000 a day calorie expenditure, your calorie flux is 3,200 calories. Okay. You've got an 800 calorie deficit, right? So that's your calorie deficit, which help create weight loss. You've got a, 2,200 calorie flux, right? Now, somebody else consumes 1,500 calories a day, but they burn 2,500 calories a day. Okay. Well, actually, I need to change the math a little. They burn 2,300 calories a day. They have an 800 calorie deficit, right? But they have a 3,800 calorie flux, right? You put those 2 people side by side and watch them over 6 months. The person with a higher calorie flux will actually lose more weight, maintain a higher metabolic rate, and actually have it easier to sustain into the future. And I think that goes unappreciated. GLPs are so powerful.
So eat more, work out more.
Yes.
It's basically eat more, work out more.
Yes.
Yeah.
run more energy through your body.
Yep.
And you'll actually get a better result. And so a lot of times what I see is that people, once they get on the GLP and they have so much command over their hunger, they're able to get on these very low calorie diets. I'm fine with it as long as they optimize nutrients and protein and keep up their workouts. But then they're a little passive about the fitness piece. I mean, they're doing it, but they're not taking full advantage of it. So they really are kind of getting into this lower energy state. They have less energy in, and mediocre energy out, or maybe low energy out. And they're going to lose weight. They're going to have success. But the end result for them is this sort of de-energized state down the road that they're going to have to at some point master. Instead, I'd rather somebody just go ahead, and say, no, we're going to have you in a pretty significant calorie deficit. That's one of my guiding principles. You've got to force the body to go where you want it to go. So we're creating what we consider severe calorie deficits. But part of how we're going to create that is through pushing metabolic rate up, not just cutting food out. And that is, I think, an underappreciated piece of accelerating results and sustaining results over time.
Yep. Yep. No, that's great. That's great. I appreciate you covering that. All right. Let me get to one person. I want to add to this too, about any concerns about over supplementing. For example, biotin, if we're trying to avoid hair loss. I know you can take a good amount of biotin, but to add to that, like, let's say I'm taking your vitamin supplements twice, but then I also take BioCare, which is a protein drink that has vitamins in it. Like, I know there's only a handful of vitamins that you shouldn't really go over.
Yes, there are, and those are easy to name, right? Yeah. The fat solubles, because your body does hold on to fat solubles. So A, E, D, and K. But you've got to go a long way to really go over those. I want to be clear.
Okay.
Right? You've really got to go kind of over the top. Of the water solubles, really only B6. B6 can cause unusual neuropathy symptoms. You can get B6 toxic. Most of the patients at intake who are not like aggressive supplementers will have low B6 levels. It's a common deficiency in our population. So most people need it. But I'm going to tell you that people who come in and they've got a pre-workout, which will typically have B6, they're drinking Celsius or some other energy drink that has B6. They're taking some type of nootropic. It's got to be, I'll occasionally see people with ridiculously high B6 levels. The reason our B6 levels in our formulation are one of the B vitamins that I didn't dose to the higher levels. I just kind of kept it kind of middle of the road for this reason, because I know that they're going to end up getting B6 from other sources, and it's still a sufficient dose to maintain nutrient sufficiency. So generally, there's a concept called metabolic saturation or biochemical saturation, and it's where you oversaturate particular biochemical pathways with nutrients that creates compensating responses. And we do have to be careful about that. It's rarely observed. Most of us are walking around nutrient depleted, nutrient insufficient, and really needing to go big on nutrients. Not because our ancestral bodies required this level of nutrients to survive. They didn't, or we wouldn't be here, right? Like we did not require, our hunter-gatherer ancestors did not require the kind of protein targets we're talking about. They did not require daily doses of essential macronutrients. Their bodies were very different. Their environments were very different, right? And so their guts were very different. So the efficiencies of their bodies in terms of taking in nutrients, absorbing nutrients, distributing nutrients, it was just dramatically different than what we're encountering now. Now, because of our modern environments, due to, regardless of how much we've detoxified our environments, we're still getting heavy toxicant exposure, heavy radiation exposure through EMFs and things of that sort. We're getting, we're not getting the same kind of sleep our hunter-gatherer ancestors got. They would sleep 12, 13 hours a night. We might sleep 7 or 8, so it's just a different game we're playing. And again, it was a few years ago that I began doing these comprehensive intracellular nutrient assessments on every patient that I began to see this pattern and go, holy cow, we got a big problem here, right? This is much bigger than I thought, big enough that I thought that maybe this is wrong. I think I've told that story. I was like, I don't know if I believe this data. And I spent a good bit of time validating the tests, the reference ranges, and comparing it to the population health literature for nutrient levels and populations. And then I realized what I'm seeing is true. I'm observing this in 9% of people. So, ultimately we need to leverage to more nutrients, not less, right? And so it's unlikely someone's going to end up in a state of biochemical saturation, but it can happen, which is why generally I don't have, other than the food I eat and my proteins, all my other supplements don't contain other micronutrients, right? I'm like, I find a good protein drink. My protein powder has collagen, colostrum, and whey protein from grass-fed animals. That's it, right? It doesn't have a nutrient complex. I don't have anything else where I'm loading more micronutrients into my body, because I don't think you need any more than what we've got, and I don't want to be in that saturation state. But if you're getting a little here or there and something else that you've got, no, you're unlikely to have a challenge from it. Now, once you get to your optimal state and you've been optimal for a while, that changes. And it also changes my recommendations. Like for most people who've been nutrient repleted, I would tell them they could use my formulation 5 days out of 7, right? And they're going to be just fine. They don't need to take them 7 days out of 7 because the body is capable. Anyway, that was a long answer, I know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. So, I have another question. I'm going to ask one first, then we'll get to that one. We all have issues on these meds with constipation. I use a drink daily that has digestive enzymes that really helps.
Yes.
But what do you recommend? Like, is there, things that aren't, obviously we're always like, don't use laxatives every day, that kind of thing. Try to go natural.
No, so most of my patients do really well with, there's a couple of different fiber supplements I recommend that work quite well. It depends on your own tolerance. And with fiber, again, if you'll recall, I think in the first conversation, we covered how you have to take care of your gut while you do this, right? You can't neglect the trillions of symbiotic organisms living in your gut that feed off of what you feed off of, right? And so it's critical that we're taking care of the gut. One of the biggest pieces of taking care of the gut are the essential nutrients. They need all the same things that we need. They have cell membranes, they have all of that kind of stuff. And so that's a big part of it. But fiber is a critical piece of taking care of your gut. When you're not eating a lot of food, you're not getting a lot of fiber. And you're also, when you're not eating a lot of food, you're missing out on a piece of hydration that comes with food as well. So you have to account for that. So for many patients, good old psyllium husk, but an organic, like good quality brand, not just the stuff that's coming in from China being produced in big vats that probably has heavy metal contamination. So you can find organic psyllium husk easily on Amazon, and you can build your tolerance over time. You can, if you mix it into stuff, it's going to really thicken it up, but you can do it in smaller doses. But people who tolerate psyllium husk well, the people who don't, it's not dangerous. They just get very bloated with it. Layering that in, it's going to absorb a lot of water, and it's going to actually create softer, more fluffy, like easy to pass bowel movements. Now, I also complement it, and the product is made by Garden of Life. It sometimes gets back ordered, but if they'll always bring it back. They produce it themselves. It's called Raw Organic Fiber. That's the name of this product, Garden of Life Raw Organic Fiber. And it's been my favorite fiber for years, and I've turned a ton of people onto it, and most that I've turned onto it are like, thank you, right? This really is great. Because it's a blend of organic, all organic, obviously, ground, flaxseed, chia seed, plant sprouts, and grain sprouts. It has prebiotic fiber, soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, plant-based amino acids, plant-based omega-3s. Like it is a gut superfood.
That's awesome.
And so I actually mix that. Yeah, I actually mix that in too with my protein, and it does thicken it. It texturizes it a little bit. I drink it really quick, but if you like to sip it, you might decide to try different methods. But that blend of some psyllium husk fiber and that raw organic fiber typically solves most issues with like bowel motility. The other thing I'll have them add in is some magnesium citrate, right? Not high dose laxative doses, but a daily dose of magnesium citrate.
I take a triple complex, every night. So.
Yeah. And so I have found over time that the combination of magnesium citrate and the fiber resolves the constipation. Yeah, you'll still have slower motility, but you're not having a problem evacuating regularly. In the rare cases where that doesn't work, and I have patients who really are affected, but they need the GLP, I'll move to the prescriptive therapies that work on bowel motility. And there are prescriptions your doctor can prescribe you. One's called Amitiza, another is called Linzess, and they do actually work. They can be very helpful.
We swear by Mago 7 if you've ever used it.
Yes.
So, okay, my good friend Teeny wants to know, what can I do to boost metabolism? Is it harder for people with low thyroid to lose on GLP?
Well, it's harder with low thyroid to lose, period, unless you've optimized your thyroid hormones. But just because you have low thyroid doesn't mean you can't have optimal metabolic. In fact, sometimes you can have a better metabolic rate with people who don't have low thyroid if you're dosing properly. So typically, if I have a patient who has low thyroid, one, I have their genetics and I kind of know their like potentials for converting T4 to T3. So your pituitary makes TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. And that's typically what a doctor is surveying. Is it, if it goes over the top end of the range, that means that you're probably low thyroid and the pituitary is signaling, let's make some more thyroid hormone. Thyroid might not be responding to that. But there's a second piece. The thyroid hormone essentially creates T4. T4 is converted to T3. T3 is doing most of the work of thyroid hormone involving metabolic changes and metabolic rate. So a lot of people have slow conversion of T4 to T3. So they'll have low thyroid, they get on the conventional products, Synthroid, levothyroxine, and what they're getting is T4. And if they have good conversion, that's just fine. So the follow-up should be your free T4 and your free T3 level, and potentially adding what's called a reverse T3, because sometimes you'll build up a lot of reverse T3, which actually antagonizes your T3's function, right? And so that can be a problem as well. It's not that common, but it does happen, and it can be checked if you're not responding. Let's just say you're low thyroid, you get on your levothyroxine and you follow up your levels and your TSH goes from 5 to 1.5. Okay, well, the pituitary looks like it's happy at this point, right? Because its feedback loop is really T4. And you measure your T4 levels and they look solid, middle of the range. But you measure your T3 levels and they're still 2.6, right? So an optimal free T3 for metabolism would be, and an endocrinologist may yell at me right now, but it would probably be like in the 3.5 to 4.5 range. Right now, because of how lab reference ranges have been adjusted to population norms, meaning i.e. a sick population, right? There's certain hormone levels that the labs are now reporting as abnormal that used to be considered normal. Thyroid's one of them, testosterone's one of them, and it's a real problem because what we're doing now from a lab perspective is normalizing low testosterone, right? We're like saying, oh, okay, that's normal, but it's not. It's not a conspiracy. It's historically lab reference ranges that guide decisions have been based on population averages. That's how we do it, a normal, healthy population. The problem is that when you're indexing against an unhealthy population, which the majority of Americans have some type of health condition, they're not healthy. Half of them are, significantly overweight, right? So if that's the population you're using to say, oh, these are what are normal ranges, well, then now we've got a problem. And I went into that detail because if you are wanting to increase your metabolic, if you want to maximize how thyroid can boost without going too high, without trying to use it artificially just to increase your metabolic rate, that's a bad idea. You'll want to get your free T3 up to 3.5 to 4.5, not any more than that. If you get it up to like 4.2, depending on the lab that your doctor, it may say, oh, it's too high. And then your doctor may say, oh, you're hyperthyroid. And be like, no, that's actually, I feel good. Like everything's great, that kind of thing. But it's critical that you're tracking the free T3, because if you're a low converter, you can add in direct T3, right? We can actually prescribe people. It's called liothyronine, or through compounding pharmacies, we can do a sustained release formulation of it. And essentially, you'll be on a dose of T4 and a dose of T3. Some of the patients I treat only need the T3. That's all they need. They just need a little T3 boost to get that back up. Now, and if your free T3 is 3.5 to 4.5, and your TSH and T4 are normal, you should have no issue with metabolic rate from thyroid, like at all. So the key is just making sure you're managing that, kind of like to, in a very precise way.
Awesome. All right. So let's see. Any thoughts, and I'll expand on this one, on lion's mane mushrooms or any. I take them all. I do reishi, cordyceps. It got rid of my asthma. It's unbelievable how amazing mushrooms are. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that there's a lot of possible health benefits, and there's a lot of good studies. I use rotations of various, adaptogenic mushrooms like, chaga, turkey tail. And then also I think lion's mane's a great nootropic. Lion's mane can get overdone. I don't mean that like if you took a reasonable dose every day that you're going to have a problem. Lion's mane definitely activates the brain. It can also over time increase oxidative stress of the brain, right? Your brain is constantly creating energy. It's using the most of the energy of your body is being used in your brain, right? Not most, but the biggest share of it, so to speak. And so the byproduct of your body, your brain cells combusting carbon, fats, and carbohydrates with oxygen and making energy is exhaust, right? Various reactive oxygen species, which eventually are going to bog down the mitochondria. You've got a lot of metabolic waste and product that needs to be built, that needs to be dispensed with. And because the brain's a closed system, it does that more slowly than other tissues and organs, which is why deep sleep is so critical, because that's when we're actually draining all that out of through what's called our lymphatic system. If you're not getting deep sleep, you're going to get brain foggy for multiple reasons, but one of them is you have a lot of metabolic waste product hanging around your brain, bogging down your mitochondrial function, right? And so when we use nootropic agents, things or stimulants, we have to be mindful that what we're doing is we're putting a pressure on the system, putting to work harder for us, right? We're activating that system, but at some point, our brain still has to recover. It still has to deal with that, right? Now, I will just give a hint to the audience that one of the best things you can do to manage that mitochondrial exhaust is something most people don't know anything about, but it's called carbon 60. I don't know if you're familiar with carbon 60. There's two good companies for carbon 60, only two that are truly getting rid of the adulterants that are associated with its production. My favorite is called Wizard Sciences. Ian Mitchell is their chief science officer. He founded it. He's a brilliant biophysicist out of Tulsa. He's a good human being.
I know that company. That's funny.
You would resonate with him, Kelly, on all like the quantum biological stuff.
I got something from them once a long time ago.
Yeah. So he's also the chief science officer of a company called Lila Quantum, which creates these quantum cubes that are designed to change frequencies and of atmospheres and charge things. And he's got some pretty good data showing improvements in ATP production in cells with it. So anyway, he created these carbon 60 elixirs. And you can buy one that's just a pure carbon 60. Carbon 60 is a unique form of carbon. It's man-made. It turned out that it's an incredible sink for toxicants and oxidants. And if you can load it into your mitochondria in your body, you'll almost immediately have an improvement in mitochondrial efficiency and performance and clearing of metabolic waste product. And so it's one of my favorite tools. It's not cheap, but it's not over the top expensive either.
Daily or
so you use it typically 5 days out of 7. The doses are low, like 2 teaspoons. So he's got one formulation that's olive oil based, and that's designed for the whole body. He has one that's uniquely designed for the brain that's bound to caprylic acid. Caprylic acid is converted to ketones, and the carbon 60 just piggybacks on the ketones into the brain and will greatly reduce oxidative stress of the brain. So it depends on what you're going for. Depends what you can do. If you have the budget for it, you can up level to his next level products, where he took not only the carbon 60, but he added NMN for NAD recycling, resveratrol, proteolytic enzymes, CoQ10, and PQQ. You want to talk about just an incredible mitochondrial performance formulation.
What's that one called? I'm just curious.
There's the Olympics RX, which is designed for the whole body, and then Neural RX is designed specifically for the brain, right? And so in this case, what you're really doing is supporting brain function, brain activity, by just managing the exhaust better. So a nice 1-2 punch is lion's mane, right? And ginkgo and things like that, along with a little, the 2 teaspoons of, say, Neural RX. And now you're really working both sides of the system to get a result. So carbon 60, the data on it is phenomenal. It's just not real popular. I would not just go online and buy any carbon 60. There's one other company, and I can't think of their name, something purple or something like that. And they make a pure product, but Wizard Sciences is definitely pure, high potency. And he's studied it in his lab and proved that it's penetrating into the mitochondria. So back to the mushroom question. One
question on those. Is there any reason someone would take both, since one's full body and one's brain, or is that over?
Well, you can take both. I take both.
I'm totally intrigued now. So
actually, the carbon 60 at high doses potentiates muscle fiber firing. You can recruit more muscle fibers. So it's expensive, but I actually take a tablespoon 5 days, not 2 teaspoons, but a tablespoon of the Olympics RX, because the recovery from workouts and the potential of the workouts is phenomenal. And you're using unique pathways to get this done. You're not just trying to lump onto some other pathway you're already pushing on, right? It's like a really unique way of coming into the body and cleaning. And it's a good binder. It binds up toxicants in the gut and throughout the body. It's just a really good thing to do. But back to the mushrooms. I do look at it through an ancestral perspective. we would have like nibbled on different mushrooms and roots and herbs and things that were available to us. And that's where I think some of the unique biochemical positive impacts are. But we would have been on low doses, and it would have been intermittent. It would have never been every day that we sent reishi mushroom into our system, or some other similar mushroom, or every day that we put lion's mane into our system. So cordyceps, I really love. It's for many reasons.
I swear
Yeah.
it got rid of my asthma.
Yeah, I can believe that.
I heard someone talk about it, and I haven't used an inhaler in like 5 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I have a product that has lion's mane that I'll use 3 or 4 days a week, and then I take a few days off. I'll use reishi mushroom sometimes in the evening 3 or 4 days a week. I'll take a immune blend of chaga and turkey tail and others occasionally just to boost my immune system, and then back off. And then, but cordyceps is one that I'll almost take daily potentially.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. But so when anytime you get out of the realm of just essential nutrients and you get into other molecules, therapeutics, botanicals, etc., nutraceuticals that have a positive impact on the body, you have to recognize that those are not part of the base operating system. Right. And so you're bringing in special forces to get jobs done. And when you bring in special forces, they're really precise and they're really great. But if you just brought in a big team of special forces all the time, eventually you're going to create a lot of collateral damage, right? And so it's being intelligent and not expecting these things to do more than they can do for you. But I love how they nudge the body in a positive direction. And I do use them liberally in my patients, depending on what we're measuring on blood tests and everything else and where we're trying to take them. So yeah, I'm a fan of the mushrooms. Oh, ketones. We haven't even talked about ketones. Like, what a great adjunctive therapy for improving results with this. I don't know if I'll wait. You've got questions, but
yeah, I mean, but we can definitely circle back. We don't have a ton. Someone's asking about Garcinia cambogia.
Yeah, the data on it's not great. I mean, yeah, it's been around forever. It was lumped into some of the thermogenic products. It's not that it's bad, but when you look at, they'll claim like, I can't remember, like 30% improvements and this, that, or the other. And the actual net result of like adding Garcinia in terms of metabolic rate, I'm making this number up, but it was something paltry, like 20 calories a day or something like that. It's not a one I reach to for metabolic boosting.
The raw organic fiber, that's fine daily.
Yes, it's great for you daily, especially when you're not eating a lot of food, because you're really taking care of your gut.
Getting that one.
Yeah.
And then what are your thoughts on, what do you recommend for deep sleep if nothing else is working?
Yeah. All right. So and when you say nothing else, I mean, yeah. So the things that can potentiate deep sleep, first and foremost, is always magnesium, but specifically either magnesium threonate, which you can buy separately. It penetrates past the blood-brain barrier, and definitely
threonate.
It's THREONATE, magnesium L-threonate. Life Extension has a good one. There's some other companies that produce a good one. Taken at night before bedtime can boost deep sleep. Glycine, right? Glycine capsules can potentiate deep sleep, and there are good studies on that as well. You have to take like 2 to 3 grams, like 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams, but you can buy glycine capsules or powders very inexpensively. The lemon balm is an herb that can induce sleep. It's not so much that it's going to increase your deep sleep, but it will induce better sleep. Peptides like Semorelin and CJC and Semorelin can improve deep sleep. But if they're not too activating for you, probably the most powerful way to improve deep sleep is ketones. So that's a nice circle back to, what we were talking about. Oh, GABA for some people. GABA is gamma aminobutyric acid. It's an inhibitory neurotransmitter that's commonly unbalanced in our bodies because of our overexcited lives and brains. And so GABA, it does not cross the blood-brain barrier. We know that. There's some evidence it might have a direct gut interface where it gets taken up by nerves into the brain to have an impact. You have to assess your response. I personally prefer people to, if they're going to try GABA, to try Pharma GABA. Thorne makes a product called Thorne Pharma, PHARMA GABA. It's 100 milligrams. You take a capsule close to bedtime. That can potentially improve deep sleep if part of your challenge is just a brain that's been overstimulated, overexcited. But the ketones, so ketone esters, and right now there's a company that has a massive marketing budget, and they sponsor all these athletes called HVNM. it's not that they're a bad company, but their ketone product is not actually a ketone ester. It's a ketone alcohol. It has to be metabolized to ketone esters. I don't prefer that product. You'll come across it. It'll pop up on your social media feeds and da, 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 da. If you're going to choose a ketone ester, the product from Ketone Aid, which can be bought on Amazon, they're not cheap.
Like the letter
Yeah, yep, Ketone AID.
Okay, got
My colleague Frank Losa started that company. He's a ketone expert and a chemist. He's done good studies. Ketones are obviously an alternative source of energy for the body. It's a natural thing to use ketones. When you're losing a lot of fat, you're in ketosis. Even if you eat some carbs, you're going in and out of ketosis, meaning your body is catabolizing fats for energy. It's producing some glucose, possibly through gluconeogenesis. But what it's really feeding the brain with is the ketone bodies that are created as part of breaking up fats. So the ketone bodies are the preferential food or energy source for the brain and for the heart. And it's a very clean source of energy. It's minimal metabolic waste when you're burning ketones. And so your brain performs better and longer. Your fitness, you can perform better and longer. Ketones have a tiny caloric effect that you have to be mindful of because it is a source of energy. But if you take the true ketone ester and you take like a capful or two prior to exercise, especially if you're exercising in a calorie deficit or in a fasting state, you will be able to perform better. Period. Like the combination of creatine and ketones and these things we've talked about, you'll definitely find that you can uptake. You also recover faster. I use ketones, and patients who've had concussions will recover much faster if they start using ketones regularly. If you've got a very busy day and there's a moment in the day where you're just brain foggy, you can take a shot of ketones and it'll do better for you than caffeine, helping improve brain performance.
I want to try that then. Yeah.
But at night, a low dose, not a high dose, because a high dose, your brain will just kind of turn on and be working. But a low dose, just right at bedtime, can really make a big difference in deep sleep and recovery.
Wow, that's wild. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know you.
By the way, we stock the Ketone Aid products. I buy it from Frank at wholesale, and our markups are not much, right? So if any of your audience gets interested in trying ketones, our office could facilitate that and save them some money.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah. I'm interested.
So just communicate with Courtney.
I will.
And tell her what you'd like to try. Each little bottle of ketone esters, I think it's 12 doses. It's $25.
Okay.
You buy it like on Amazon, it's like $40 or something like that.
Oh no, I'll email her. That'd be great.
Yeah, and
I just ordered another set of, the month.
We just got our new batch in. I reformulated it. I changed the niacin ratio.
I'll email her. Maybe she could send it with that. Is what I'm trying.
Yeah, she can absolutely do that.
Okay. So 2 quick questions. I know you have to go. I know we're ending here. So let me get both of these in. Is there absorption issues with levothyroxine and or any amino acids really?
Well, you don't want to take your thyroid with anything else, which I know.
Them separate, but you can have them on the same day.
Yes, that's right.
Not at the same
the key with the thyroid, whether it's the T3 or the T4, is that you have that 30 to 40-minute window before you put anything else in, which is a challenge because we're on these complex regimens, right, where we're dosing all of these things and you wake up and then you got to wait 30 or 40 minutes. But that is critical for the thyroid hormone to be absorbed and do its thing.
Now, and I think I know the answer to this one, but NAD+, it's an injection.
NAD+, yes.
Right. But now you're seeing all these pills. I've heard it's not actually NAD+ that you're getting in pill form. It's basically ends up just being niacin. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, boosting NAD is a kind of a holy grail of longevity medicine because NAD is this critical redox molecule. We talked about the redox system earlier briefly. And as we age, it goes down and we are not able to continue to maintain energy flow, right? So NAD is critical. Low NAD levels are a hallmark of developing diseases and things of that sort. And so the key is, the first thing to know is NAD is made out of niacin. Right. And so your first thing is to make sure you have adequate levels of niacin. In our formulations, it's 100 milligrams split dose between the nicotinic acid variant and the niacinamide variant. So we've covered the basis there. Whichever pathway your body prefers for creating NAD, we've covered it. We've covered it doses that should work. Some people might benefit from higher doses of niacin, and they can experiment with that over time. Now,
a pill is okay then? It doesn't.
Yeah, but the pill is if you're already taking your niacin, you don't really need another pill with niacin. So the other pills that are touted to improve NAD are either NR, right? Nicotinamide, ribonucleotide, or whatever, which is a part of the pathway of creating NAD from niacin. So you're jumping in later in the pathway. The studies are mixed at this point. It appears to be that there might be some benefit, but they haven't proven yet that it improves intracellular NAD levels, but it improves blood NAD levels. But NAD doesn't cross from the blood to the cell. So there's still a question. The other is NMN, which is another basically precursor. Now, if you were to choose to go the higher tier carbon-60 elixirs that we talked about, it has NMN in it. And then finally, there are products that combine some botanicals along with niacin that are touted to improve NAD. Again, the data is lacking. So when you're buying, say, a vial of NAD to inject it subcutaneously, and if you decide to do this, this is expensive, but you can buy vials from like Peptide Sciences and they're good quality, but this is expensive. And what you're going to do is inject 100 milligrams subcutaneously for 7 days, maybe out of every month or something. It's not cheap to do that. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that people feel better, they have greater energy, they have enhanced mitochondrial performance. There's still no evidence that NAD is actually getting into the cells, but there do appear to be a lot of potential benefits from doing that. I always just start with optimizing the nutrient availability so that your ability to create NAD is optimized. If you're going to choose a next level NAD product, the best one on the market from my perspective is made by Neurohacker Collective. It's made by the company. So they have a product quality. Let me find it for you real quickly because I just blanked on what they call it. I don't take it personally, but I do believe this is the best way if you want to experiment and then just assess how you feel. Does it make a difference? The product is their, where is it? Right here. Here we go. So their website is now called Qualia Life, and they have a really good nootropic blend that's good for the brain. And then they have like others, but don't go hog wild just buying all their products, okay? Because you could, so they call it Qualia, Qualia NAD plus. Okay.
I don't see it on their site. Weird.
If you go to Qualia Mind, and it's got micronutrients, but they're like
quality of mind or quality of life.
And no, Qualia. So QUALIFE.com.
Got it. Qualia. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay.
And so what they've done is they've added the additional micronutrients are trace doses. So you're not going to like get too much with this formulation. Because, I mean, we're talking trace doses, like the B6 is 0.49 milligrams, but they're giving you more niacin in mixed forms. They're also giving you the nicotinamide riboside, the NR, and then they're giving you some transresveratrol, which is touted to possibly, it's been kind of debunked, and a tiny bit of caffeine. That product, the scientist who created and formulated it, he's been doing this for like 40 years. He's brilliant. I trust him. I've listened to lectures from him. If there was any non-NAD product that could boost NAD, this would be the one that I would think could possibly do it. But the starting place again, though, is just the niacin, and the niacin doses that we've programmed in should be sufficient for most people. For people who are training a lot, maybe they want to add some more. You could add it in the form of this product where you're going to get your combination of niacins and your NR and other such things. But NAD is a worthy target to go after. But I right now use my formulations, and I have my other stacks, creatine and carbon-60. I'm not using anything else to necessarily boost NAD at this time because I'm just not. I'm waiting for more data to show that it's actually doing it because it's expensive. Yeah,
I think we need to do this again.
We can
if you're down. I mean, I'll be recovering for a while, but I could see, especially after you try out some of those products. I'd love.
Yeah, I'll be interested in reporting back because I think those could be really helpful to people. And as you know, I'm all about keeping the GLP at the lowest dose we can possibly keep it because there's a recovery there's a recovery on the other side. This is going to be interesting to you. So I just did this talk on. It was not a GLP talk. It was just peptides in general to a bunch of clinicians that are involved in a learning platform called the Human Longevity Institute. One of the ones listening is a clinical study specialist out of San Diego. She just runs clinical trials and is really good at it. And she had already had in her mind to do a clinical trial to take people who've been on high dose GLPs and put them through protocols for metabolic salvaging, to like restoring that normal metabolic signal. And she heard the talk and she asked if I might be willing to help with like the coordination and the production of the study. And with that, we'll begin to see pathways that people who have ended up on the high doses for longer periods of time, maybe we'll start learning how we can help them down ratchet it and get back and not have to use the GLP. So that's exciting news as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
thank you very, very much. I don't know if you can spare like 60 seconds after I end the stream. I just want to ask you a couple quick questions.
Sure, I can. And just to remind your audience, I do this unconditionally because I love sharing the knowledge with people who are passionate. I want to see people get healthier. Our formulations, I know that they're expensive. I know that, but they are combinations. Like the dosing isn't just multivitamin. This is a combination of a lot of things to solve a problem. And so it adds up. Ultimately, our goal is to get the pricing down. If we can scale up manufacturing to thousands of units, not hundreds of units, the price is going to be cut in half. And then then it becomes a family friendly, right? And then we'll be working on a kids formulation, and so for those who can support us in that way, it's helpful, right? If somebody can afford the base product and through your platform, there's a discount. It gets it down to basically our patient rate for the products. It's not as expensive as it looks at first. And so if you're willing, if you can budget for it and you can give it a try, I think it'll help you. I think it'll simplify your life. I think you'll get benefits. And ultimately, we're on this mission to like really begin to change the health trajectory of the country. And so this isn't so much about trying to make money for us as get the formulation to a place where we can get it into the hands, especially like food deserts. I would like to be able to run studies where we could donate it to food deserts and see how that changes the health of the population.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now I can still spare 60 seconds.
Yes. Okay. All right. But guys, thank you. I'm going to end the live now and we'll do it again in the future.
Yeah.
I just want to